Hi everyone, I am Danielle and I run Soda Arts, which is a curatorial consultancy based in Sydney. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm making this call on the unceded lands of the Gadigal and Wangal peoples of the Eora Nation, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge that First Nations artists are our first artists and makers. If this is your first Outbreak, thank you so much for joining me. The idea behind these talks is really very simple. Once a fortnight on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock, I jump online with an artist in their studio, me in my office, and we talk about what they're up to and their work. And they're really, a very relaxed and informal conversation. So today I am being joined by a wonderful, warm, lovely, talented artist, Elizabeth Willing. So please just bear with me while I bring her up. Hello. Hi, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good, thanks.
That's good. This almost didn't happen because you and I both completely didn't factor in, what is it? Daylight savings. So your
Yeah.
2 o'clock and my 2 o'clock, not the same 2 o'clock.
No, and it's gone totally over my head. I've made that mistake once a couple of weeks back as well. I just, time is nothing to me at the moment, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it is. It's a pretty elastic now more than ever. And also, just before I introduce you, we're having this conversation at, you know, probably a really insane day where most people are watching the news and just, clinging on for dear life to see the outcome of, I don't know, some small election or something. So,
Interval. That's
Yes. Okay. Well, look, before we jump into it, I thought I will just briefly introduce you for people that are not familiar with your work and your practice. So you're based in Brisbane and you are a visual artist who uses food as your primary subject matter and material. And for over a decade, you've been working to create edible installations, food sculptures, painting, printworks and wallpapers, as well as experiential multisensory dining experiences, which I hope we will have time to talk more about. And really, a lot of your work is about the ethics of food consumption and production, and you really take quite a critical look at existing food systems. And obviously, whilst those are really kind of serious ideas to digest, I realize I was about to say. There's something, what is so appealing about your work is it does operate on a very sort of playful and intriguing and visceral level. And that's why people respond so strongly and connect with it so well. And there's this great quote that I am just going to share that Rachel Parsons, the director of the New England Regional Gallery, said to describe you, which is that you are not only an artist, but a cook, designer, engineer, and scientist, testing and manipulating the material qualities and limitations of food and applying your highly refined aesthetic. And I didn't want to paraphrase it. I wanted to say it and acknowledge Rachel for saying that because I just think it's a really great description of your work. So we actually met nearly 10 years ago when you were selected. I know. When you were selected as an artist for Safari, which was a fringe festival to the Biennale of Sydney. And, you've really been forging this bright and illustrious path through the art world in the years since. You're represented in Australia by Talano Galleries in Melbourne. You've received numerous awards, international residencies. You've exhibited widely across Australia and internationally. And in fact, you actually have a restaging of two of your really in my opinion, iconic works, Goosebump and Pick Me Up, in an exhibition, a group exhibition, Amuse Bouche, at the Tongli Museum in Basel. So, in case we don't get to talk about those, Goosebump is the work where you've installed pfeffernuss and royal icing on this beautiful big interactive wall, and Pick Me Up is this lovely panel of chocolates that people can actually open and engage with. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
pleasure.
So where are you right now?
My home, my lounge room, but it's a total kind of mess at the moment, a city of boxes really, because we're moving in 2 days. We've sort of grown out of the place that we've been in for a couple of years. We thought we had a studio when we moved in. We're like, this is a pretty good studio downstairs, and it's amazing how quick that can just become a store of artworks. So yeah, so we decided just before summer hit, let's find a new place. So
Yeah. Great. Yes, I didn't really mention, but you have, your time is also, you have a small human that has sort of entered your life, which is something that you are also kind of balancing in and amongst your, an incredible amount of work and art projects, which is,
small, but they take up an amazing amount of space. All of a sudden, that's the main reason why we're moving, actually,
yeah.
as well. We just need more space.
Yeah, physical and psychological. And so what are you working on at the moment?
On a bit of a maternity leave. I knew that I would need the headspace this year, so I kept it open. But I just finished a commission for Metro Arts. Metro Arts sort of jumped the river and moved over to West End, and they did a series of commissions with some local artists. And I created a set of 15 curtains, unique curtains for their rehearsal space, which was a really nice project to work on. And that sort of combined some of my printmaking aesthetics with some of the more recent research from the Wine Institute that I did a residency at. And what else? I mean, a few sort of private commissions. It's nothing major, to be honest. It's a pretty quiet time for me, but I've also been writing a lot of applications for things, because as the house sort of closes in on you, your computer becomes your studio, and so it's been a good time to write. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And so could you talk a little bit about some of the key ideas that you explore in your work? Obviously I've introduced that food is a really core idea, but perhaps speak a little bit about that and how that's sort of expressed in different projects.
Yeah, food is the core idea. I mean, consumption as a type of performance, I guess. And as you sort of flagged at the beginning, the ethics and politics around eating and growing food come into it as well. But even though that seems sort of very specific to work with food for my whole art career, it's also extremely broad, the ways that I approach that material. And a lot of it's about exploring the multisensory experience of food, so that the experience of engaging with the work is very multisensory, very hard to kind of pin down. In a performance sense, it's about kind of thinking through the body as an eating object. And so I'm kind of thinking about my body and my experience of eating and my history with food as well, but also trying to look outward and trying to pinpoint some of the issues with food, the concerns around food that are sort of swirling around locally and internationally. And that's really broad. I mean, I draw a lot from really low food culture, shitty processed mechanized food systems, as well as the high end of food. And I absolutely adore sort of chef practices as well, like delving into the practices of top chefs around the world, because I mean they're thinking about food as a fine art as well. And so I mean that's a sort of smattering of things that inspire me, but it changes day to day. I just always look through the lens of food and eating.
Mm-hmm. And actually that's maybe a good little segue into some of the collaborations that you've done with chefs, when you've collaborated with chefs on some of these dining experiences. Could you maybe just explain a little bit about them and what they involve?
Yeah. They're usually one-off events, but actually at the moment there is one available all year at the Wolf in Brisbane, which I've collaborated with Josh Lopez on. And it kind of comes from a place of um, exploring like ways that the audience can interact with objects and food, but there's a lot of limitations in the gallery to that. So what I was finding early on, I'm very prepared. I was is because they wouldn't work in the gallery that they and so the dining table seemed like a natural extension of my art practice. And so I started putting on, in a very small sort of way, these dining experiences. And so creating new plateware, new cutlery, or napkins, or just kind of really sort of blowing apart the performance of dining. That it didn't have to be this very carefully choreographed way of eating, that it could be playful, it could be experimental, it could absolutely be more multisensory than it already is, and that that the objects that we interact with at the table can make us rethink the that performance of dining and the ethics of the food that we're putting in our mouth. And yeah, the ways that I kind of play with that platform are again really varied. And a lot of the designs that I created 5-6 years ago, I'm still rethinking and remaking in current dining performances. But yeah, I try and keep them small, 20, 25 people max. I do consider them as a performance, but there also need to be these days collaborations, because I don't have the capabilities to develop the food side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so is there a project that you've worked on that you're most proud of?
I feel I don't know if they could consider projects, but the residencies that I've had the privilege of working on have remained with me. Of course, exhibitions are incredible to be able to make, but residencies are without as much pressure. They allow much more play. They're just they're freedom, and they often in other places, and so that just you can just be a sponge and you can just feed that creative process. Yeah, I think
so. Yeah. So can you whereabouts are some of your key residencies that you've done?
I mean, more recently I was in Adelaide at the Australian Wine Research Institute for 3 months. That was an ANAT residency. Nereham in Armidale for a couple of months maybe. I spent a year at the Kunsthausbotanion in Berlin, and Helsinki for a couple of months as well at HIAP. Each one is, just so great in different ways. They've all offered completely different learning experiences. I couldn't say a local one isn't as good as an international one. Yeah. And then I've organised mentorships in cities as well, which are kind of, I don't know, loosely residencies as well in a way, but they're more about sort of learning how to develop a practice, learning off an established artist, to how to manage being an artist as best as I can.
Yeah. And I have to say, Liz, like from when we first met, yes, nearly 10 years ago, that was so apparent. I know to Nina, who was the co-curator of Safari, and I, that, there was this, you were just, as well as obviously very talented as an artist, and the work that you made was beautiful for that show, but you were so respectful and understanding of the professionalism of an arts practice and what it took. And I think shortly after that exhibition, you were off to, or you just come back from a mentorship with an artist, a quite well-known European-based artist. I can't remember who it was. And I think that's just, that's clearly put you in good stead, because you've understood, like, yes, the discipline and the commitment and the professionalism of being an artist is not something that just happens overnight. It is actually something you apply yourself to and think about. And, for that, you really have to be commended.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice. It honestly though, I hope it makes everyone else's life or work a little bit easier, but it's so stressful doing what we do. You've just got to like cut all the crap out, I think, and trying to make an art practice more streamlined, to really focus on what's important, to give yourself your creative practice that space that it needs.
Yeah.
You just don't want to stress about anything that you don't need to.
Yes. Oh, and I've just noticed the time, so I am just going to throw one last question at you, which is, what do you see as the value of art?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and in a way, I don't want to know the answer too clearly. It's that would maybe ruin it for me. But loosely, for me personally, I can only speak for myself, but it's about making sense of the world. There's so many different contradictory ideas out there, and I don't pretend to have answers to them, but by kind of weaving together, some of those things in new ways, unexpected ways, maybe it helps you make sense. And I guess the other thing is, there's such a pleasure to relate to people on a different level, to create a sort of empathy that's embedded in objects. I think that those are the two things that are strongest for me.
Yes, I love that. Empathy embedded in objects. That's good. I'm gonna
objects.
No, I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me. It was so wonderful. If people want to connect with you, Instagram, your website, Talana Galleries, I'm assuming, are the best places?
Yep, those three. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. Well, look, thank you. And this video will be on the Soda Arts Instagram TV and also eventually on the Soda Arts website. So thanks again, Liz, and fingers crossed for the rest of today, world. Let's just hope it's a good day.
Yeah.
Okay. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.